to the Brave and Her podcast, where we inspire, empower, and motivate by sharing our stories of bravery. I strongly believe that by sharing our stories, we open ourselves to healing, but also serve to give hope and inspiration to those who are dealing with a tough situation. We will talk about all topics under the sun. Now let's hear your stories of bravery. Hey girl, thank you for being here for this episode. I'm so excited for this episode because we have my friend Micaela Deegan. She is a fellow podcaster and a dear friend, and she just became a published author. She wrote Dear Fearless Mujer, You Were Created for More, and she's here to talk to us about the book and who is it for, and all the good stuff about the book. Micaela, hi, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you for being here. This is, I think, your third time being on my podcast.
Yeah, I think so.
This one's a little different and a little more special because you're, like I just mentioned, you became a published author, and you're gonna talk to us about your amazing book.
Thank you. Yes, I recently became a published author, which is I think I'm still kind of absorbing because I've had several people ask me, "How does it feel to be an author?" I'm like, I don't know. I still feel like myself. So it's definitely kind of a weird thing. Not in the sense that, oh, it's like a bad thing. It's a great thing, but it's just kind of weird to see all of the work that you did is like now in this tangible thing, and you see it and you're like, wow, it's kind of weird. So yeah, I put the book got released last month, so it's still new, and it's just really a surreal kind of time in my life where people are saying like, oh, like you said, page this and this part of your book, and it's so interesting to just hear other people share your words with you. So it's been pretty interesting. It's still hitting me.
You're like, page what?
I'm like,
I don't
wait, what
remember
page?
what's on what page.
Well, I said on my podcast the other day, I'm like, I was talking about how our gifts are for the benefit of others and to bless others. And I'm like, I'm not reading my book. Like, I already read it and, helped edit, and I'm not reading it at night. It's other people. So it just really reminds me and shows me that when we do our part and we say yes to God, other people get to be blessed because of our yes. So
Yes, I agree. Even though sometimes is not sometimes, most of the time, it's harder to follow the yes than not, right?
yeah.
So first, let's talk about the book. Why you wrote the book and who is it for?
Yeah, so the book, I really wrote it because I really had this almost a burden that I needed to write something that was really going to help other people. But I also felt that I needed to talk about when we go through hard, painful things, it's not the end of our story. I also felt, even though the book's not about sexual abuse, it does talk about that. So I felt that we needed to take away all that shame from people who have experienced that and speak our truth. And so even though like I do mention my dad in the book, and I talk about things that are really personal, it's really us sharing our truth, because when we don't speak our truth and when we don't really share what we've gone through with others, then it's almost like there's this shame around everything that we've gone through. And I think a lot of times when we overcome things, we really have a unique opportunity to share with others, especially women, because it is for Latina women. It's in Spanglish. It's, Dear Fearless Mujer, You Were Created for More. And in the book, it's a little Spanglish, because that's part of who I am. That's the way that I speak. I think it's so cool that we get to have these two languages that we can blend together. And so a lot of us Latinas, we have a lot of similar things that we've gone through. I've heard from other women like, man, I was sexually abused and I wasn't believed, or I was told to be quiet. And somewhere along the way, our voices have been silenced. And so I feel that this book is really a open door to start talking about hard things. Even though it's not easy, even though it is a very deep book, what happens at the end? That's why in the back it says like, what if your setback is actually your stepping stone to something greater? And I think a lot of times we don't look at life that way. We just stay stuck in our pain. And so what if we could actually overcome it and now start to help other people heal?
Yeah, that's great. And so I was telling you about what I thought was like the whole um message of the book, because you gave me the opportunity to read it before you published it, and the like one of the things that for me was um kind of like key is that chapter of exposing the lies of that we tell ourselves, or that like how you mentioned in the book. And I don't want to give away anything that's in the book because you have to read it. It's
Yeah.
really good. I mean, not you already
No,
wrote
no.
but but
Well, we should tell people that your name's in the book in the acknowledgement section. So I really didn't know who to trust when I was sorry, I interrupted you. But I didn't know who to trust when I was like, oh my God, I need people to read this, even though it was a mess. It wasn't even edited or nothing. And so it was only four women and you were one of them that I'm like, can you read this? And I was just so grateful. And I think when you're first starting out writing a book, you're so like questioning yourself, is this
yeah.
good? Like, and then the whole thing that it's in Spanglish, I'm like, oh, what if people don't like it? So I was just so grateful that you guys read it and you kept my secret. Like, that's what I put in there. Like, thank you for keeping it top secret. So yeah, I just appreciate you and the other women who read it. So thank you for that.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be one of the first ones to read it. And I loved it. But going back to what
Yeah.
and even you just said that, like those lies that you believe that,
Yeah.
what if it's not good enough? And
Yeah.
it all ties into like those lies that we believe that you mentioned in the book, and just reframing those lies. And I've been in other things with you, like another like coaching program where you're teaching us how to like write those lies and flip them. And I think you did a really great job in the book showing that as well, like
Yeah,
how you
thank you.
consider yourself.
Yeah, I think it's if you I don't know if it's in that chapter, but I talk about the bush that my husband, said don't take it out. I kept telling him, "Take it out. It's dying. It's dry." And he was like, "No, it probably has flowers or roses or something." And I just remember that every time I would see this rose bush, I'm like, "This thing is so ugly, like right here in the driveway." But to make a long story short, him and I started to unwrap the weed. There was a weed and it was so tight, like it was hugging the plant and it was so tight. And I remember we carefully unwrapped it and then we pulled it out. And if you ever had a house, pulling out weeds really sucks. But we took it out. And as I was writing this book, because later after we did that, I don't know how much time passed, maybe a few weeks, maybe a month, there was really pretty red roses growing, like that lipstick color red that is so pretty. And as I was writing the book, I remembered that moment of how the weed was so tight around it. And it wasn't until this bush, right, this plant was set free that it really began to flourish. And I really started to think about how we believe lies for whatever reason, whether it's from upbringing or abuse or things that have happened, even as adults. It's not until we free ourselves from those lies that we're able to flourish and our color comes back and we start walking in confidence because now we know who we are. We know who we were created to be. And I hear this so much, Anel, as a coach. Oh, I'm so worried about what people are going to think. Well, a lot of times we're so worried because we're still believing these lies,
Yeah.
whether it's what people said or, whatever we did, maybe a mistake we made. And so when we start really freeing ourselves and exposing the lies, then what other people say doesn't matter, because now you understand, like, yeah, I did used to believe that, but that's not really who I am. And so, yeah, I'm like so passionate about, like, girl, what are you believing about yourself? Because that's obviously not true, you know?
Yeah. So would you say that this book, you already said a little bit about who is it for, but would
Mhm.
you also say is for you know, I think a lot of women would um relate to what you're saying. So would you say it's for many women who are still believing those lies, who are stuck and can't get past that because those lies are still there?
Yeah, so I say that it's for Latina women because that's who I wrote it for. That's where God has called me, right? My brand is for Latina women. But ultimately, like, I'm God's daughter, so it's for whoever wants to read it. But mostly it's for those women that need to be reminded, like, hey, it doesn't matter what you're going through right now. It doesn't matter what pain you've gone through or you're experiencing in this moment. On the other side of it, there's something there. There's something greater. And I think that so many times, because I'm guilty of this, right? Allowing what I'm going through to really hold me down, where I can't see past the pain. And even with the book, like, I talk about my dad, how, I mean, the whole story's not in there, right? Out of respect for my dad, but he did not choose to support us in this season of me, telling the police and sharing that my daughter was being sexually abused by my dad's brother. And he didn't, for whatever reason, he didn't choose to be on my side or his granddaughter's side. And it was such a painful thing that I realized, man, my whole life and my whole identity, I just wanted my dad to see me and be proud of me. I wanted his validation. So many times we're looking for others to validate us when we really don't need anybody's permission. And I think in the Latino community, we still sometimes, when it comes to our parents, and I'll just speak for myself because maybe it's not like this from others, but I've heard it from other women that are Latinas. We still care so much about what our parents think, to the point that we will not thrive and we will not be happy because we want to make other people happy, because that's how we were conditioned. And it's fine, right? It's fine to serve other people and it's fine to ask for advice, but at the end of the day, it's our life,
Right.
right? It's our life and we get to choose what we do moving forward. So it's also about that, like how sometimes people we love will choose to walk out of our lives. And whether that's a parent, a sibling, a spouse, what do you do in that moment when your whole life comes crashing down? It's almost like you have to build yourself back up. So I feel like there's so many good things in there that, yes, it's really straight to the point, is what I heard.
Yeah.
But like, we have to talk about these things because we don't need to walk around in shame, or we don't need to walk around covered in band-aids just because we don't want to confront the things that hurt us, you know?
Right. And I was just gonna add that you know, just because our parents or our spouse or our siblings want something from us or for us doesn't mean that that's the correct thing. Ultimately, we have to, and I say this, this is easier said than done, but each of us have our own purpose in this world,
Yeah.
and just follow what your purpose is.
Amen.
So another kind of tough question. You're also a podcaster. I mentioned that earlier, but um, So why write a book and not share your story on your podcast?
Well, I have shared my story. Honestly,
Like why a book and not just, continue with just your podcast and
yeah.
why
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no, but I was done. That was
Okay. Anel, it's hard for me to we just talk, we're friends. So I always want to talk. So honestly, I think in the back of my mind, I did always feel like, oh, one day it'd be cool to write a book. But I really thought, oh, when I'm older and I'm successful, I'm gonna tell people how I got there, type of thing. But it was really, I was at a conference, like a podcasting conference, and it was, I don't know how to explain it other than in that moment, I just felt so inspired to write the book. And I knew that it was really God prompting my heart because I knew exactly what it was going to be about. And when you think about telling this story, which it's really not the whole story. It's a very small part of my story. I'm not telling my daughter's story because that's her story. I'm just really talking about what happened after, my daughter was sexually abused and then having to pick up the pieces and really my healing journey and how it ultimately led me to empower other women. So I knew that it was something God prompted in my heart because I just knew what this book was supposed to be about. And I love to read, first of all. Like, I love to have a book in my hand and read and highlight. I feel like books just take you to a whole other world. They challenge your point of view, And one of the things that I have really been praying for is I hope this book goes to places where I can never go, places where I may never be able to go. And when you look at a book, like we're still reading books from people that aren't even around anymore.
yeah.
So I just think that a book, like podcasts are amazing, but a book is something so tangible that somebody can hold, someone can take it with them. And I think that your message, even after you're gone, it just leaves this legacy for not just the people that read it, but your family. So I don't know, maybe because I'm a book nerd, like
No, and it's true. And you know what? And some people they don't listen to podcasts. They don't like podcasts. So and like I guess a marketing perspective, like you're just targeting a whole different audience too with sharing your story. And think about all that audience that would benefit from you sharing your story.
yeah, I don't know. I always loved to read when I was little, and then, I got into trouble growing up, but I just think it's so beautiful that people can have something, right? Like I know when I take my daughter to therapy, I take a book with me all the time. And I'm sitting there reading and I'm lost in my own world, and I just think it's so beautiful to have your message written down. So, yeah. I know I gave you a long answer.
And then there's people like me that like to like highlight stuff, like
Oh, yes.
highlighted stuff. You can't do that with a podcast.
No, or an ebook. I need the book and I need to put post-its
Yeah.
yes, yes, I love that.
So why should we buy your book?
Because if you want to be inspired, you should definitely buy it. Or you know what? Gift it to someone else that maybe really needs to be reminded. Because I think it's a beautiful reminder of like, man, who are you really?
Yeah.
Like you were created for more.
Yes.
Sometimes we're gonna have to do hard things like confront our pain, but at the same time, it's when we do those things that we really, really see who we are. Like we're not really defeated, right? So I just think that if you want to have a book that's going to inspire you and it's pretty, because I think it's pretty,
Yeah, this is
uh
good.
it's a great addition to, and it's a great, girl, Christmas is coming like around the corner. It is
Yeah.
a great Christmas present, I'm just saying.
Christmas,
Also,
birthdays.
yes, and also it is, so I will say this, it's not necessarily for Christian women, but it is written in a perspective of like, hey, I cannot tell you my story without telling you what God did,
Yeah.
because it took a lot of faith for me to even trust that everything was going to be okay after, not having my dad in my life anymore. He raised me, so it was really painful. So it's not really for a woman who's a Christian. I mean, hey, you can read it. That'd be awesome. But I really want the women who don't really believe in God to understand, like, hey, it's not even about religion, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes we just need that faith to believe that everything's going to be okay. So that's why I wrote in the book, I can't tell you this story without telling you what God did, because it really was a lot of faith and a lot of prayer. I mean, this happened 4 years ago, and honestly, on it, like, I'm like, dang, like on Monday morning, the Monday after I had a party, it just kind of hit me like, oh my God, it doesn't hurt anymore. Like the one thing that hurt so bad, you just one day wake up and you're like, it doesn't hurt anymore.
Yeah.
And so it's really a great reminder that things do work out sometimes, they work out for the best.
Yeah. Yeah. So I normally ask, what's a one word Bible verse, that keeps you going when you just want to give up? But in this case, I want to ask you, describe your book in one word.
Oh, I would say powerful.
I was thinking the same thing.
You were? I was gonna
Like,
say inspiring, but then I'm like, no. I had breakfast with a friend the other day, and she was she was telling me, let me tell you what I see from the outside. And like she almost made me cry because she's like, we see you as a voice. And I'm like, I'm just me. Like if you're my friend, I'm super humble. I'm always talking about tacos, like, I'm just me. And so I do believe though, I needed that book in that time in my life. And if I had a book like that, oh my God, I would have held on to it so tight. So, I don't want to cry, but I would say that it is not because I wrote it, but it is a very powerful book.
and yeah, I mean, not because you wrote it, but because you were obedient to following through what God was calling you to do.
Yeah. Amen.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. As soon as I was asking you the question, because I just literally just came up with the question, um, that word just came to mind.
Oh, thank you. I was gonna say inspiring, but then I'm like, no. I mean, it is inspiring, definitely. It's
Yeah,
pretty. But yeah, I believe it's powerful.
yeah, I completely agree. So if you haven't listened to her podcast, go and listen to her podcast. And I highly recommend you picking up the book. Get it on where? Where can we find your book?
You can go on Amazon. Please leave me a review if you get it, because I gave a bunch of them away, and you can't leave a review if you didn't buy it on there. So that kind of, I'm like, oh well. Barnes and Nobles. I'm not promoting for Walmart, but if you have a Walmart card, you can go to walmart.com. If you Google it, there's a lot of other online stores. So those are the main ones though, where you can actually get it from.
Okay. And anything last minute you want to say, or not last minute, but
Yeah, I really just want women to know, like, whether or not you believe in God, you are here for a purpose. And no matter what's happened to you, no matter what people have said to you, you're worthy and you have a purpose. And no matter what mistakes you've made, because so many times we have a hard time forgiving ourselves, but you have a greater purpose. And that's just kind of my reminder, attention, you have a purpose.
yes,
Like if I could, I would have a megaphone like, attention ladies, you have a purpose.
everyone's born with a purpose. Just
Yes.
by being born, there's a purpose.
Yeah.
Just by being conceived, there's a purpose.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Micaela, and thank you for being brave and following through with what God was calling you to do. I know it's not
Yeah.
easy.
No, also because you're my friends. I've shared so many things with you. But yeah, it's not easy. But I think when we start to see our fruit and we start to see women just even say, like, man, this changed me, or something you said. And I think even as podcasters, like, we have that privilege of doing that. So yeah, like, it's definitely worth it. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And I'll have all her information in the description, so you can go check it out, listen to her podcast, and buy her book. Thank you, and I will see you in the next episode. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this episode inspired you. If you like this podcast, please share on social media and tag me on Instagram @TheBravenHer. I would love to hear your stories of bravery.